Hi guys, welcome. This is Jose, also known as Jose Not One. Welcome to That's a Dude in a Dress podcast. Ollies. We have my best friend here today.
Also known as
Malexa. It's an inside joke. It's on my live on TikTok. Normally people are like, Malexa, change the music. So anyway, this is also, I just want to also mention that this is sponsored by the Woodpack Show on all platforms. Please follow, subscribe, listen. They're amazing and they're sponsoring this podcast, so you know they're phenomenal. Gracias. Okay, so on today's subject, let's just get to it, honey. Let's get straight to it. We did mention this in the past podcast, is that growing up in the West Side, and I feel like that's any Latino, you can separate it, and the West Side can like change to East, South, whatever it is. But for us in San Antonio, that's the hood, and you know that's the hood, honey. Well, I grew up in the West Side. Melissa, you did too, right?
yes, both parts by Lanier High School and then Old Highway 90 and 36, like in that area.
So to me, it's just one of those things. Growing up in the West Side has always been like an obstacle course when I was younger, but there was a lot of lessons to be learned. And mija, let me tell you something. I grew up in a big family. So I had 4 older sisters, 1 younger brother, a mom, a dad, a tia, and we all lived in the same house. And you know what that means. Like, you grew up with the big family too, right?
Same, yeah. All sisters, 2 brothers, mom.
Okay, so
yeah.
Same.
Grandma, same.
And I feel like that's one of the things that we don't talk about. What exactly what's part of that? What does that consist of? Because I remember we lived next to Perales Elementary. Shout out. We lived in like a duplex. And it wasn't all of us, but the majority of us. But I know one time we just moved to we call here is the courts, but up north they call them the projects. But let me say, growing up there, we didn't have, like, my grandma was taking care of us. My mom was in and out of jail. We didn't have, like, somebody to take care of us financially. My grandmother got government assistance, and so that's how she paid the bills. And even though that living in the projects, you know that you, like, the bills and monthly, whatever, it's not as much.
Yeah.
But when you barely have any income coming in, that's a lot.
Yep.
So I think rent, I really don't know how much rent was. I never know. But I remember seeing my grandmother, and I think I saw a bill for like 100 and something bucks.
That's nothing.
I know that is not, that's true. But I'm telling you, because she's on a fixed income, words they're hard. A fixed income that the little things, like you had to pay the rent, the electricity, the water, all that good stuff. Whatever it was so little. So what my grandma did was that she sold drugs. That's the honest truth. That's how she survived, and she knew how to keep us. I get it. You can scream all you want. You can judge all you want, but this is my truth, is that she sold drugs. And what part of that is that I saw a lot of up and down with it. Like, I remember one time I had there was, I guess she was having a meeting with, back then, was when you were doing selling drugs like that in the area, well, the people above the people above the people, because there's always a manager, right? A supervisor over supervisor, even in the streets. Well, they found out that my grandmother was selling, so they were like, we need to speak to you. You need to pay us so we can protect you. But nobody protected us like during that time. So, but when they found out, I think it was just the law of the streets.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't get that, is that there's a law when it comes to the streets. And I remember one day, I was one of the youngest ones. So I remember my grandmother was like, hey, when the men get here, all of you go upstairs and do not come out. And I was like, I don't know what that means. So my sisters were like, just go upstairs, stay upstairs. And so even my oldest sister, who wanted to be there, was like, my grandma said, no, you take your ass upstairs and you don't come back down until I tell you. It was so scary to know that, because it wasn't just one man. I remember they knocked on the door, and my grandmother had like a transparent, like that tela. What do you call it, tela? What,
Yeah.
like a screen door. A screen door. That's what it's called. Another door. But where you can see everything going, in and out. And so I remember the three men came up and we knew immediately. Because there's no men in the house besides me and my brother. And we were young. So she was like, go upstairs. And she said, come on in. The three men came in and you could... There's like they carried like this aura around them. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
Like you could tell had something happened, they were gonna take care of it. And so we went upstairs like, Bo, you know how we were gonna do it. We were gonna listen in, honey. I was gonna listen because I wanted to know exactly what was happening. And I remember he said, my grandmother's name was Paula, and he was Paula. Well, he told her like grandma, whatever, granny, whatever he called her. But he was Paula, we need to talk.
Damn.
And
That's
she was,
official.
and mind you, my grandmother's a heavy-set woman, and she can't get off the wheelchair, so she's just bound to it. And he was like, she's like, yeah, take a seat. My grandma was not, even if she was scared, she wasn't going to show you she was scared. Mm-hmm. She grew up with, like, hanging out with men.
Yeah.
She had one sister, but she always called her up. And she said, man, get stuff, Dad. But I remember they said, Paula, we need to talk. And I remember the silence, like the in-between silence of her thoughts or whatever. Because remember now, back then, before we came along, all she had to worry about was her and then my mom.
Okay.
Now she has a total of 6 of us she has to worry about. I remember she just sat quietly and she was like, ¿Qué pasó? And he says, I see you've been doing whatever you're doing. She says, yeah, I have. What's going on? She says, you're not supposed to be doing this without our permission.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, there's always a chain of command, right?
Yes.
And I didn't know what it was. Something about it scared me. It scared me because I thought these men look like they would take care of this situation. Mm-hmm. You didn't go through the chain of commands, so now you got to pay the price. You watch these scary movies and you do whatever and you're like, it's always the hood. Oh my God, that's ghetto. Yeah, I understand. But in the heart of it, in the midst of it, it's scary. It is so frightening because my heart was like coming out of my chest because I didn't know if they're going to do something to my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to be able to take care of 3 grown men, not let alone 1 girl.
So at this point, how old were you at this point?
I think I was a teenager. So I was like 13. I was still in middle school, whatever. Was that 13? Yeah, 12, 13.
It was just in your mind, you were just like, I want to protect her, but I can't because you're this little, like compared to the men that are,
I was this little, but yes, this little, but yes. So I remember my sister. I could hear her breath panting. You know when you can hear your own sound of your breath, because you're so scared. I remember at the moment I could hear the anticipation of my sister's heart and her breath as it like pulsated and I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one that's scared. So no longer that I had to worry about my reaction. Because the first thing I want to do is go.
Yeah.
I want to go and help out. But I remember my grandmother said, you better not, no matter what happens, you better not come down. Not one of them. And she told my sister, the oldest one, she said, you better not let anybody downstairs. It was that moment that I was, I could lose my grandma today. Like, I'm sorry. sorry. I think it's because I remember that I was so young and we didn't have any men around us, and that's the only time. I'm not saying men secure everything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in the moment they see that there's only one woman, young teenage girls. We're like in the moment we're nothing to them. Mm-hmm. We're just a piece of paper and money and disrespect. And so I did get scared. I got scared because I thought, what do I do now? Yeah. So anyway, the meeting went on, and as it progressed, they said, from here on out, next time you ask, next time you don't ask, we take care of it. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But I remember she said, how do we take care of this? And he said, this is how much you're going to pay every single so-and-so. I remember, I think it was either bi-weekly or monthly. It was something like that. But it was scary. they left, and at the moment that they left, we rushed downstairs. We knew what happened. We knew exactly what was going on in the moment and everything. Sorry, there's planes. But we know that when I got downstairs, I didn't know what to do but just hug my grandmother. And she knew, like, she's kind of like you, yeah, vete, get away kind of moment when you're giving affection.
I think because she knew that in that moment, it was kind of life or death. It's kind of like, they can take my life and these kids are upstairs and who's going to take care of them now?
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. So it's kind of like a little bit of a guilt almost because, I put them in this situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as much as, look, I want to say, look, my grandmother, you learn, right, as the decades come on and the years pass and generations go on, you learn not to give in to that temptation of it's easier to do this than do that. And I've noticed that my family members are learning, like the great-grandkids, the great-great-grandkids, like they're all learning. And I feel like that's the part that my grandmother, they always say that the generation before you took the worst of it all so you can live a better life. And I've seen it through my own eyes, because I remember, so part of like my grandmother selling drugs is our house was constantly raided. And do you know what that is?
I know what it is.
Okay,
yes.
Okay. Well, we constantly had this where the cops would come to the house. How do you say it? Like, they would just come to the house unexpected to find drugs. And they called it a raid when we were younger. I don't know what a sting operation?
I guess, yeah.
Something similar to that, right?
Because as for us, it's raid, so I've never, other than the sting operation, that's all I've heard.
I'm trying to because in the hood, that's what you call it. You called it a raid. At least here in the South, we did. And I remember I've been through so many.
That intrigued me when you last mentioned it, because I was like, how is it so many and how do they keep coming back? Because you would think once you get that first, second, or third, you'd be like, okay, I'm done.
So this is what my sister would tell me. Sorry, plane. So my sister would tell me that when these moments came up, your name starts getting known in the streets.
Exactly.
And they start getting to know that this is who you are and this is what you do. Yes. And this is your address, and they already know this one's affiliated, this one will tell you whatever. What a lot of people don't know is that my siblings and my mother, some of my siblings and my mother were drug addicts as well.
Yes.
So my grandmother wasn't making a lot of money because they were using a lot of it up. So when they would have a raid, and they were so scary. I remember I always felt like a child, like a younger child. Like I always felt like a 6-year-old. I always felt like I shrunk when the police they wouldn't break the door because the tela was always open. The screen door was always open. But they would, and my grandmother, like, she knew. She's all, unlock the door, unlock the back door. She's all, leave those doors open. I don't know how she knew, but she knew. And she goes, everybody come here now.
Maybe word on the street?
Maybe, or something. But I remember she would sit us down in the living room sometimes and say, sit down.
Because they tear it up.
They're going to.
The whole house.
And there are moments that they did do it where we didn't know, of course. And they would break in, Bob, sit the fuck down. Sit the fuck down. And it was intense. It was so intense. Mind you, I wasn't accustomed, like, even though I was living in that kind of situation, my grandmother kept me away from it.
Yes.
Meaning, like, if something was going to happen and she could protect me, she would tell me, leave, go with your friends, and do not come back and call me.
Yes.
Her code, even though it wasn't a good code, she's like, your friends are here. I was like, Grandma, that's not a good code.
But it's enough for you to know not to go home.
No, she would tell me, and she told me every single time, if you call and I tell you your friends are here, do not come. Yeah. Do not come until, like, wait about 3-4 hours later. If I don't answer, somebody's going to answer.
So is that how long raids would take, or at least in your home?
So I can't tell you the exact amount, but I can tell you that being in the moment, sitting there, watching all that, it felt longer than what it was.
Okay.
I think sometimes they would last like an hour and a half, It depends.
Okay.
This is my sister. My oldest sister's really good at memory. I'm not that great at it, but she would tell me that they were trying to get information out of her.
Yes.
And out of my grandmother. Well, okay. We'll let you go if you would tell us where you're getting the so-and-so from.
Yeah.
Look, my sister and my grandmother and my mama were in and out of jail, but the one thing they do not do is rat it out or snitch. She said the word, she goes, look, everybody snitch. Look, even if the people tell you they're not going to snitch, they snitch. She says, but in the streets, you got to be careful to not snitch about the big stuff. She goes, she just didn't snitch. She said, take me in. One time they were going to take my grandmother. That's how they got my sister, because they told my grandmother, we're taking you in. Mind you, she's wheelchair bound.
Yes.
She's a heavy set woman. So she thought, shit. Mind you, my sister said, I was in need of drugs that day. She said, I woke up and I was, super sick. She goes, I was so sick. I just wanted to get something done. And I was about to until they broke in. She said, and I was going to get in there and finish it, but I had to flush it because I heard them running upstairs. I just didn't have any time. She said, so I flushed it. They broke the door and she's like, what? What do you want? And so she already knew the steps. But when they set us down and they were like, you better tell us whatever, they scared her. The only time she said I did cave in was with my grandma. I told him, I'm the one that had, that was mine. She's like, no, that was Paula. That was, they called her like her government name. And they were like, she said, no, it's not, it's mine. My grandma was like, it is hers. Because that was the understanding, is that they understood that if my grandma could do more out than in.
Yeah.
And my grandma, I remember my sister said, I fucked up. I was so angry at my grandma. Even though I knew to take it for her on her behalf.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's another plane. These PJ planes. They told her once she went they took her into jail and she said, I was sick. She goes, I was sick, but I wanted to get out. I remember my grandmother, finally, I got to make the call and I was bitching, hurry the fuck up. I want you to hurry the fuck up. And she's like, I don't care. Hurry up. I came in for you. She was pissed. Yeah. And my grandmother, of course, knew that what she did, right? And she felt guilty. And so my grandmother was like, I'm trying my best. I'm going to get you out. I'm going to get you out. I'm going to get you out. And she did. She didn't do it that very moment. It took her a few hours, but she did it. It cost her a pretty penny, but she finally got her out. And afterwards, she goes, I did the drugs. And that was the drug speaking. Yeah. She goes, it's never the human being. It's never your daughter, your grandmother, your granddaughter.
It's somebody else.
It's someone else. And she said, once I did do it, and I took it, I apologized. It's weird. I one time sat down with my sister and I said, because I don't know what it is to do drugs like that. Sure. So I told my sister, what is it like? What's the percentage of your thoughts of thinking about drugs? Like how does your thought, or how long does it think about it all day? And she said, honestly? And I said, well, yeah, pendeja, that's why I'm asking. She said, about 95 to 99%. And I said, no, like throughout the day, like how often do you think about it? And she said, 95 to 99% of the time. She goes, the only time we're not thinking about it is when I'm asleep. Because she did heroin. And I didn't know. I thought you did it and then you're back. I don't know, your thought process is back to it. But she said, no, the moment you wake up, you think about it. And then you get you have to get the money to get the drugs. And then you have to worry about the fact that you have to get like the next fix.
The next fix and the next fix and the next fix and the next fix.
But I guess because we all have our own things, right? Where we worry about how we were. Like, I think my trauma is eating. Because we didn't sometimes have food and all that good stuff. I've said it in another podcast, in another episode. But I worried about that, and I think that's my issue nowadays, is that I'm never going to have enough food. So I always eat all my meal. And leaving it, I feel like there's guilt behind it, right? Because it's like younger you feels like you're not feeding him.
Yes.
I don't know how to explain it, but that's the way to say it. Like the younger you isn't going to be fed. But it's weird when my grandmother did whatever she did, and I get it. It was wrong and she shouldn't have, right?
But that's who are we to judge? Like that was her way of providing for you guys. Like for me growing up, it was hard for me to understand the addicts that I had surrounding me. It was tough. I always judged them. I always I always was upset, angry, and all those things. And it took a relationship that I was in to see there's always a backstory. Oh, yeah. There's always a backstory behind why people or addicts do what they do or end up where they end up. So in the end, I was just like, well, who am I to judge, or anybody to judge what your grandmother was trying to do and provide for you guys, because that's all she knew.
Honestly, I think that's growing up in the hood. Every other not every other, but you knew someone who was doing it. Yeah. Either doing it or selling it. It's weird. In the neighborhood, we knew another family. Yeah. And they also did it, or their kids did drugs or whatever. It was like the common denominator in the neighborhood. Like you just knew. Yeah. I think that's why my grandma always protected me. She tried her best with her other kids, but I don't know how their relationship were. I can only speak on my own. But I can tell you that when my grandmother would find a way, she would tell me, "Mijo, listen to me and listen to me carefully. I don't want you to turn out the way I did. Yep. I don't want you to have the same struggles that I did. So when I tell you stay busy, it's because I want you to stay away from this." She says, "Look, your older sister, your other sister, some of them are going through the ordeals your mom already went through." She goes, and I feel like she blamed herself because my mother became an addict, but my grandmother was already selling drugs. She wasn't doing it, but I think she was like in and out of doing it. Okay. But she did blame herself for it. And I don't think she ever said it with those direct words, but I could feel her trauma. And she was pretty much telling me, don't let me pass this trauma to you. Do whatever you got to do to be better than me. And she would tell me all the time, be better than me, please, Papa. Be better than me. You're smart, you're handsome, you're skinny. Well, I was a lot skinnier. But she would tell me all the time, you've got to do whatever you got to do to stay busy and follow your dreams. Oh, honey, I guess I always felt like it was my obligation. If that made any sense.
No, it makes sense.
It felt like an obligation in my family to be the one to fight harder, to achieve more, to graduate, to pursue certain things. And with that came the pressure. And I think that's how I dealt with my eating habits, is that I gained more weight because I gave myself so much pressure of, you've got to represent this whole family in a light that seems like it doesn't revolve around drugs or addiction, and because my mother did steal to do the drugs. She didn't steal she didn't steal at her friend's house or anything. That's weird. She taught me, along the way, she taught me some morals. And she said, you don't ever steal from somebody's house. Any friends, any family, no one. Because they'll never trust you. Yeah. She says, and you never want them not to trust you. And it's weird. Let me tell you something. And it's so weird how it comes back later in life. But at the moment, I didn't understand it. All I knew is don't steal. Even though it was, what a conundrum, right? My mom's like, don't steal. But she would go to the stores and steal there. And so I remember when I was younger, we were living in the house behind another drug dealer's home. And my grandmother and my mom were in jail. But my grandmother was getting income for us and food stamps and so forth. So she gave the woman all our food stamps to feed us. and all she fed us was spaghetti and sandwiches. That's it. That's it. But she tested us along the way. She would leave dollar bills throughout the rooms of each house just to start off with the dollar bill to see if we would steal it. And I was like 7, 8, and 8, so I was really young. But I remember seeing the dollar and I was like, well, I want $1. Because you don't know, right? You're just young and you're like, oh, I want $1.
Yeah.
When the man comes out and buys something, like
Raspero.
Raspero, yes, the ice cream truck. But you know what the weirdest thing is, my sister always told me, don't you grab that. I see you looking at it and you better not touch it. It's because she knew. Later in life, she told me, no, they were testing us. She goes, did you notice how the money started getting bigger and bigger? And I was like, oh, yeah. She said, yeah, it started off with $1 and then $5 and then $10. And once in a while, you would see a $20 bill. But it was in places it shouldn't be. And that's how we knew it was being tested. It wasn't just on the table right there where, people throw their change. No, it was like in a bookshelf, lying there. Just like temptation.
Yeah.
And I was always like, damn, that's a cute 20. But I never took it. But that's something my mom always knew, is that somebody's always going to test you in life to see your values. When you shouldn't be tested, right? You either know who you are or who you have around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even at a young age, I knew that it meant a lot to my mother because I didn't understand. I just thought, don't steal, but yet you could steal at stores. So I didn't know. So all I did was not take it.
Yeah.
I didn't take it. But so anyway, I know that I did most of the talking, but I feel like I would like to know your perspective on growing up in the hood and what drugs, if that meant anything.
I was never part of any, well, maybe I wouldn't say a raid, so to speak, but more of a like knocking on the door and is so-and-so here? We know that this is the address, and kind of pounding on the door in the middle of the night because of course they want to surprise you.
Yes.
And say, okay, let's see if this person's here. Obviously, that person wasn't, which was my sister, wasn't there, wasn't living there at the time. But I did grow up with addicts surrounding me on my parents were separated early on, so I am the oldest on both sides, so that carries a lot of the weight in and of itself. But as far as addicts, I was surrounded by both, but I also was sheltered in a way. But I kind of know the rules of the streets and what not to do and not to rat out and not to I was offered it at one point in my life or several times in my life.
Oh my God, I was just gonna ask you that.
I was offered, but not by family by any means, because like I said, I was very sheltered in that sense, but knew enough to understand that it drugs are not good. I was offered it by my childhood best friend at the time. Yeah. And I was just like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this, but I was never tempted to try to use or anything like that. It's hard to speak about it when it comes to family, because it's not something I open up about a lot. Like if you know me on a personal level, I'm very, very private. So
extremely.
Yeah, I don't want to hurt any family members by saying who's,
No, and you shouldn't. I meant like the experience in general, but I know exactly what you mean. You shouldn't have to. She moves in silence. I always tell her, you move in silence, honey. But and that's a good thing. Sometimes it doesn't, because it wears you thin. Yeah. Because you think you have to carry it.
And I think this wore me thin, because not understanding why either I wasn't enough or why that having to be an addict was such a not understanding what an addict is and how it took them to get there. And I still won't understand certain family members and why they got to where they got to, and why, certain. But for me, I wasn't enough. So it was hard growing up because I've had several family members pass away from it. And so that's why I say I'll never understand where it came from. And I have an idea, but growing up over by 90 and Old Highway 90 and 36, that one was like the deep, like.
So if you're not from San Antonio, that's deep in the west side. Yeah,
and that I feel like that was harder for me, and that's kind of where I learned the term, so to speak. And understanding, oh, this is code for this, or this is code for that, and he gets mad at me because he says you sound hood, and I was like, it comes from growing up on that side of town, and then kind of.
Well, you're a grown ass woman now.
I know, it's hard for it to go away. So definitely it's hard to watch those watch them, growing up, not understanding. I know I'm kind of going in circles. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm trying to tell the story without naming.
And that makes it really difficult. You don't have to say names. I completely get it. Let me, just to backtrack for what you said earlier, is I thought my grandmother prepared me enough, and my mom and my sisters prepared me enough to say no. But what a lot of people didn't know, even to like close to this age, is that I have trouble saying no. I was a people pleaser. Don't come at me now, because now I know how to say no. But
same.
Back then, I didn't know how to say no, because my friendships meant everything as they do now. Is that's my blood. That to me is my chosen family. But one day during prom, it was, I think, not senior year. It was like junior, because I went to sophomore as well. I can't remember, it was sophomore and junior.
Man, you were Mr. Popular. So
what?
sophomore, junior, and senior?
It was one of those, sophomore, junior, and senior.
I barely went to my senior.
I know, sorry, to rub it in your fucking face. But I was sitting down in the hotel room. Mind you, there was top, like when I say top, I say the senior class at that time.
Oh, okay.
And they were top performers. They were top like percentile. There was football players. There was all these people that I idolized when we were in high school. When I walked in,
idolized, like
I did, because I admired one of them was a gay guy, and I admired his being flamboyant and out and not giving a shit.
And he was an athlete.
No, he wasn't an athlete, but he was surrounded by athletes.
Okay, gotcha.
And I remember I walked into the room, and I sat in the corner closest to the door, and the guy says, "Hey, do you want the white?" And I said, "Oh no, I'm good, thank you." I was like, okay, I said it finally, that we should be good there. He says, no, come on, try it. He's all, look, we're all smart here. He goes, that's the captain, blah, 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 or not captain, but he gave an example. Like, that's a football player, that's so-and-so, I'm percentile, I blah, blah, blah. And they went on and on and on. And I was like, no, I'm good, thank you. And he was like, no, come on, try it. And he kept asking and asking. So by the third, fourth time, I was about to say yes. Because I was in this place of, oh shit, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what to tell him.
Yeah.
Well, luckily, I don't know from the universe or what happened, but my friend walked into that door and she said, hey, she goes, I didn't know you were going to be here. I said, oh yeah. I said, how are you? I whispered, get me the fuck out of here.
Saved by the bell.
Saved by the fucking bell. You don't know how. She was like, hey dude, let's go to the other party. And I was like, okay, bye guys, we're going to go to the other party. I walked out and I was like, thank you. They were trying to give me drugs and I was about to take it. And she's like, you were? I was like, yes, bitch. This is the time that I've never been uncomfortable, but I was uncomfortable. But luckily I said no. I walked away from that day and I was like, okay, never again. But yeah, it was one of those moments I thought I was going to be able to handle. You know how you prep kids over and over.
And that's it with me. It was kind of like, here you go. You want it? And I was just like, no.
Not
Like,
me licking it.
I don't know where I got the no, I don't want it. Like, get it away from me. I mean, luckily they didn't peer pressure me, but I was just like, I was like, here you go. I was like, luckily I was familiar with it because I would have been like, what's that?
No, I thought I was prepared this entire time, all this good stuff. But it does take you aback a little bit when you don't know when it's coming.
Yes.
And it's harder when it's a peer telling you take it. And I remembered, you know what triggered my memory afterwards is that the reason my mom started doing drugs is because a peer of hers told her, let's try it. My mom was like, no, I don't want to try it. She said again over and over, and she said, come on, well, let's just try it together. So my mom finally said, okay, fine. She goes, you go first, and then I'll try it right after you. And she goes, okay. So my mom tries it, and she says, I got high, and the feeling felt euphoric or something. She goes, it just felt so good. And I was like, wow. It was interesting to hear her perspective, but then she said, as soon as I got high, my friend said, no, thank you. I'm not trying it. And she's all, what do you mean? Because my mom was still kind of okay. And she's all, no, you said you were going to try it. She goes, no, I'm scared. Never mind. I don't like needles. And after that day, that's the day that my mom became addicted to heroin.
Same with the family member. Same thing. It's like, try it. Tried it and became addicted.
My sister was angry for a long time. One of my sisters was angry for a long time. She said, if I ever saw that fucking bitch, I would beat her ass. But I was like, hey, whoa. It's not the place of you should stay angry. You should try to forgive. I'm not forgiving that bitch. She put us through hell because of that. Oh, she gave us our shitty childhood. She didn't know what she caused. Mm-hmm. But there's like a consequence to everything. Mm-hmm. And I said, but if we didn't, we wouldn't have learned to live a healthier life.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
I said, because had mom said, okay, yes, our life would have probably been a little different. Yes, my mom would have had a healthier life. But what makes you think we would have survived and been able to say no?
Yeah, because I think, okay, so let me ask this question. Do you regret that life, or do you feel like, man, I wish I would have had this or that or anything like that?
Younger Jose would have said, I would have traded this for a different life. Mm-hmm. I remember I would cry and beg when my mom was going to jail, when they dragged her into the cop car over and over. I would beg and cry for a new life. Please give me my mom. Please stop. Let her stop doing drugs. Please, God, please let this be the last day. And I would over and over. It was like almost a ritual. But if you talk to me now, no.
Same.
Now, because I learned.
And I think we're also survivors. We're also, we know how to get ourselves either out of the situation, or if we know that there is a situation, we're like, skirt, let's just go over here instead. At least I know for me, I wouldn't change it.
I wouldn't either. It does give you a way to survive. Mm-hmm. Yes, it does give you the trauma. Yes, we have to carry that with us.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to, but luckily we have therapy, thank goodness. And we get to choose to break the mold of what we're used to. Let me pick this, hold on.
Yeah, I feel like it's fun.
But we get to choose our path now, and we don't have to fall back to the same thing. I swear younger Jose would have never thought he would have had his own podcast. Younger Jose never would have thought that he would have had the limelight in whatever that means to me. But here we are, and here I am.
I don't think I would be sitting next to you doing this.
Yes.
At all.
No, you would never. It's weird. If you know Melissa, you would know that Melissa does not like to talk. She doesn't like to speak of her life in general. Yeah. And to open up to you all in front of a camera on.
Yeah, I don't like
She would have said 2 years. She would have said
nope.
Bleep, 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 bleep. Mm-hmm. Just to everything. No. Everything she says is always like. Back,
every other word is.
It's a back.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, can you use a word that's not the F? Can
but
you
it's so therapeutic.
No, but you can express words without the F word. But No, I completely understand. Look, this was heavy, but I'm grateful for you guys for listening because it can't always be kiki and
I'm
haha.
sorry. I wish I was a little bit more open, but it was a little hard. I didn't
No.
think it was going to be.
No, that's okay. I feel like there's people out there that are like you.
Yeah.
Not everybody's an open book like me, and I feel like there are people out there that can relate to not opening it up. But it's okay to share, even if you're not doing it in front of a camera. It's okay to share with the people you trust. With that said, thank you for listening and thank you for being part of That's a Dude in a Dress podcast. I'm Jose, also known as Jose Na Juan, and this is Malexa.
Also known as Melissa.
Yes. Thank you so much. Dame un besito because we gotta go ahead and go get food. Bye.